you mentioned this thing of, I can't remember what words you used, but the structure, the identity, the personality that has served you in a way has suddenly falls apart. And I mean, it's got to be one, I think it's got to be one of the most shocking, terrifying things that can happen to a human being in a way. Because we come to, because we're identified with this thing and it's served us and it's our security, absolutely. So you could say that in a way, the whole of spiritual life comes down to seeing beyond that identity. But when you have an experience of beyond it in one sudden go like that, and the ground is taken from beneath you, it's really awful, awful, and disorientating. I mean, those words don't say enough. I would say there is a process that you actually kind of can acclimatize to that. Oh, that story isn't real, or that I thought that was me, but I'm more than that. So on the bigger picture, it's like to realize what oneness is, to realize I'm not just this thing in this life and this story, that I'm, in poetic terms, that I'm everything. To realize that is the journey, is the waking up. That is waking up. But to be thrown into it from being identified is terrifying. So there is a process of kind of acclimatization, and for some people that's just steady and slow and bit by bit. And for others, they have this experience where it's just like from 0 to 1,000 miles per hour, it feels like. And yeah, it's really hard. But even then, there's still the acclimatization to that. What is it? The understanding of it. There's this process of, well, what if I'm not that? Who am I? Or where am I? Or all of those kind of unanswerable questions are what's encountered in this journey. But I'm basically just saying that it can happen in one big whack like that. Not that it's over, but the confrontation, the experience of being outside of it. It's odd, isn't it? Because often, the experience of being beyond personality, being outside of it is absolutely blissful. And that's an opening. And yet it can also be what we're talking about here. But the reason it's so painful is because of our allegiance to it and our identification with it and everything that goes with that. We're identified with it, and it gives us security. So it's basically seeing through it or going beyond it suddenly takes away so many things that made us feel secure. And mainly like, oh, this is who I am. I know who I am. I mean, most people out there think they know who they are. Yeah, I'm this guy and I do this job and I have this wife, and they think that's real. And in a way, it is real. There's a kind of reality to it in the relative level. But there is so much more as well. And in another realm, not another realm, in another way of seeing it, it is just a part of the story. It's just a part. It's not, most people walk around thinking that's everything. That's everything. I am this thing, and that is the truth, and that's who I am. And waking up is realizing you're kind of everything. And part of that is the story. And it's nothing wrong with it. And it's all good. And these parents and this story and these talents. So that's all good. But it's knowing the both. And that's the kind of balance, really. That's what we're all doing here. We're all kind of coming to terms with that. That's the journey in a way, in different ways and different subjects. There's so many different ways into it. That's what we discuss here, really. In a way, I wouldn't say the breakdown is an experience of beyond personality. It's more, to be more succinct, it's the experience of personality, of the personality breaking down. That's where the focus is rather than what's beyond it. Because if it was more about what's beyond it, there would be more peace in it. So there's that. And then you've got maybe what you could call the opposite, where you have openings. and then you have, experiences of bliss, and you have, well, that's not about the breaking down of personality. That is about what is beyond personality. But the funny thing about openings is you have the opening and you have the experience of being beyond personality for a time, but then all the stuff that you've been catapulted beyond has to be confronted and seen. So you then come back from heaven into the hell of that. It all has to be seen in the end. So they're all different experiences on the path. And the other one is something you kind of pointed to, Cindy, is like understandings. So they're less traumatic, but they're like where you get, you know what I mean by an understanding. You suddenly sort of see a part, for example, a part of your personality, a pattern, and instead of being unconsciously living it out, you've gained enough distance to see it for what it is. You understand how it works, and that makes a change in your psychology, really, because it no longer is supported by you. So it starts to die on the vine because it's not fed, not watered. Seeing through the personality and the breakdown that is facilitating that, or part of that, is painful, and you can't. It's not going to not be painful. It's a painful thing. So, yeah, of course, I suppose like naturally we're brought up to avoid pain, but some pain like that you can't avoid. And waking up involves almost coming to terms with that and seeing the bigger picture of like, okay, if I have to feel this to break through, I'll do it. So there's something in there about one's attitude to pain, that kind of pain anyway. Of course, there's unnecessary suffering, which is the suffering of personality. But we're not. I don't think we're really talking about that. We're talking about the pain that comes from the process of breaking down, of seeing through the personality. So I think there's something there about your. We've talked about this in the group before. It's like one's attitude to it, and you have to become acclimatized to. Yeah, the willingness to feel whatever you have to feel, to put it in basic terms. Yeah. So, it's really hard, but it's really important that you get the support from people like here, because not necessarily here, but I mean people like here, or people who know what it's like. Because there isn't much support out there, and they don't understand it, and they just want to fix it and put the personality back together. So that's the basic difference here. It's like, yeah, there's a breaking down. Society says, well, get it back together, take some drugs and get back out there. And here we say, well, no, something bigger is happening. Something, I know you sense that there's a bigger thing going on here, despite the surface level of a lot of intense pain. Yeah. So it's almost like holding fast to that knowledge that something good is happening here, but it's happening through this confrontation and through pain. And that process, it really helps to be supported by people who know that. And it's a bit like you need to feed. What doesn't help is to be around people who just want you to get put back together again and get out there again. But more people who know, oh, there's something beyond that, and can help you tune into that, and tune into that in you, and what that means in your life to you. Yeah. That's the real support, I think. In the end, we talk a lot here about healing and what that is, and that all goes back to the wound. And, all of this comes from the wound, really. The personality is built on the wound. So those feelings of the wound are going to come up. And as I was saying earlier, your willingness to incrementally get to a point where you can feel them more or go that little bit further into them, that's the sort of journey. Yeah, I feel safe enough to do that, because that's how the healing happens. What we talked about before with Cindy is that the thought that, well, if I open to those feelings, I will be just trapped in that, and that will be my life, and I'll be stuck in that hell. So that's the trap, that you think, well, I can't go there, because if I do, I'll just be stuck there. Whereas it's not. That's actually not true. Because if you can reach the deep root of the feeling, of the emotion, and then the feeling, something of it's released and something gets freed. So, but that is something the personality can do. It can believe that that's true. If I open to this, well, I'll be trapped in it. And it's the opposite of that, actually.